So this problem says to write a recursive function called isPalindrome, which returns true if the string passed to it is a palindrome, and reads, so a palindrome is something that is a string that reads the same forward as it does backwards. Otherwise, you're going to return false. So for example, awesome is not a palindrome, so you would return false. Foobar is not a palindrome, so you would return false. But tacocat is a palindrome, so you would return true. And so is this word right here. It's a palindrome, and this string of letters is not a palindrome, right? All right, so what we're going to do is, and this assumes that you understand how to use the method slice. So if you don't, you need to look that method up on MDM. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to say our base case, or our edge case basically, is going to be if our string dot length is equal to 1, then we're going to return true. This becomes a base case and an edge case. So if our letter is just one letter like this, A, well then you can return true because at that point it's a palindrome, right? Okay, so what we're going to do basically is we're going to take a string. So let's take this string tacocat. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to recurse, or we're going to check to see if the first letter in the string and the last letter in the string are equivalent. And if they are, then we're going to remove the first letter and the last letter, and we're going to recurse again. And then we're going to check the first letter and the last letter again. And if they're the same, then we're going to recurse again. And then we're going to check the last letter and the first letter. And if they're the same, then we'll remove the first letter and the last letter, and we'll recurse again until we get down to just one character where we'll return true. So if we come into a case where the letters are not equivalent, like an awesome, E is not equal, the first character and the last character are not equivalent, so we immediately turn false. So to do this, we're going to use slice. We're going to test, we're going to say if our string, which is what we passed into our function here, if the first character is equal to the last character, so I can take my string and do that method slice, and the last character on our string is -1 for slice. So if I have tacocat here, then what I would be comparing would be T and T, right? So in this case, what we want to do is if this is true, then we want to recurse. So when we recurse, what we're going to do before we recurse is we're going to remove that first letter, because we don't want to compare the same things over again. We already know the first letter of this string and the last letter are equivalent. So we're going to remove the first letter and the last letter using slice, and we're going to then we're going to recurse. We're going to call our function again. So what we're going to do then is we can do return and isPalindrome, and so that's the recursion, and we're going to call string.slice. So we're going to use this method, and what we're going to do is we're going to return. So this method now is going to be a string that, or this function right here is going to be a string that's going to be missing the first character and the last character. So to do that, we have a 1 and a -1 in our slice method, and that is going to remove the front character and the last character, the first character and the last character. So if we found that the two characters were the same, then we're going to recurse. So otherwise, we're going to return. So if they're not, right, so it would skip over this. If these are not equivalent, right, the first character and the last character, then we can immediately turn false. Okay, so this is basically it. The only other thing that we need to worry about is, sorry about that sound, what if we get to a point where we had like characters like this, like a palindrome like this, where we had MM and then N times N and then O and O. So right here, when we recurse, we would get down to this and here, that would take off those two characters, and then we would get to here and here, we take off those two characters, and then we take off here and here, and so we would never have a case where we had one letter. So we can have two types of palindromes: one where you have, equal amount of characters around one character, and then one where you have characters that are the same, like there's no central character that separates all the characters, right? So we need to protect for that case. So we need to add one more base case or one more edge case, right? So if the string dot length is equal to 2, right? So we've gotten down to n and m are the same, and then m, and if we could add, o, and every time we recurse, we would remove the first character and the last character. So we would get down eventually to this point right here where there is no one character left, right? But it is a palindrome. So we need to say that if we have 2 characters left and they're equivalent, then this is a palindrome. So if the length of our string is 0 and we're going to return true or false depending on if the string 0 is equal to string 1. So if this is true, then it'll return true. If it's false, then it'll return false. And if we only have 2 characters left, then there's no point in moving on, right? So if we only have 2 characters left and it's, Y and U, well, those aren't palindromes. That's not a palindrome. So then we're pretty much done then.